Hi.
Hello again. In Ray's last few paragraphs, we were dealing with the sad case of Percy Harding, disfellowshipped after 91 years of living and 70 years in the Watchtower as an active member. That brings Ray to the next subhead, which is the ultimate sin, daring to disagree with the organization. Ray goes on, Percy Harding's case is also illustrative of the organization's insistence on total acceptance of all of its teachings. In Crisis of Conscience, pages 328 and 329, quotations from Watchtower representatives are presented in which they state, quote, "If someone doesn't want to live by our principles, he's free to leave. There's no badgering here, no physical or emotional harassment. We don't dictate from headquarters." That is Walter Graham, in the days when I was leaving, the public relations representative, spokesman for the headquarters in the Canadian Bethel. Another representative of the society says, "We're not spiritual policemen. We don't try to stifle anyone in his opinion." That is Samuel Hurd, at the time traveling overseer. Some of you will have heard of Hurd. Third, if people do not want to stay, they are free to leave. I cannot understand why those disagreeing simply do not leave quietly. That is Robert Balza, Watchtower headquarters public relations man.
I am sure that all these men know that the picture they paint is not in accord with the reality. For they know what happens today when one of Jehovah's Witnesses endeavors to leave quietly. The actual situation is similar to that a soldier would face if he went to his commanding officer and said, "Sir, based on my conscience, I have decided to leave, and I just wanted to let you know that I will go quietly and not disturb the troops in any way." Unless he quickly recanted, the consequences the soldier would face, dishonorable discharge, or in the time of war, execution by a firing squad, are paralleled in a spiritual way by those Jehovah's Witnesses face.
Those who think of quietly withdrawing know they have a gun at their heads, the weapon being the threat of official disfellowshipment, or that of being officially pronounced disassociated, which is the same weapon, producing the same results but under a different name. Though not physically placed before a firing squad, any witness attempting to leave the organization for conscientious reasons can do so only at the risk of being labeled heretical, unfit for true Christians to associate with, someone that even family members should treat as an outcast. The organizational policies allow no possible way to leave with honor. Only a person insensitive to human feelings could think that there is no emotional harassment involved.
This situation has become particularly evident since 1980. Following the disfellowshipment of a few members of the headquarters staff for not fully accepting all Watchtower teachings, and also my resignation from the governing body, the direction now taken by the organization was exemplified by a letter to its traveling representatives dated September 1st, 1980. The letter spelled out a policy that even to persist in, not talking about, but simply believing anything different from what the slave class provided, constituted apostatizing, and could lead to disfellowshipment. While it called on elders to be discreet and kindly in their inquiries as to members' personal beliefs, we have already seen in the case of Percy Harding and other cases already cited what this directive produced in the way of kindly, discreet inquiry. The letter opened the way for men inclined toward dogmatism and intolerance to vent those qualities in their dealings with the flock, and causing otherwise caring men to act unfeelingly. Simple questions resulting from lack of knowledge are allowed, even welcomed. But when questions are raised that are the result of serious investigation and knowledgeable thinking that involve a questioning of any of the organization's teachings, the practice overwhelmingly is to attack the questioner and his or her motives rather than the question.
What had already taken place at the Brooklyn headquarters, documented in Crisis of Conscience, illustrates to what extent the qualities of kindness and discretion were displayed and how empty those expressions were. That headquarters example was thereafter reflected all over the United States and in many other lands. The objective has been to create a sterile atmosphere where the organization's teachings and policies can circulate free from any risk of having to confront serious questioning or having to overcome scriptural objections and adverse evidence. Is this overstated? Consider just a few examples typical of scores of others.
In Crisis of Conscience, I related the disfellowshipment of Edward Dunlap, who, after over 50 years of association, most of them spent in the Bethel service, was in effect put out on the street at nearly 70 years of age, disfellowshipped for having expressed viewpoints in conversation among friends that did not conform to all the organization's teachings. I mentioned his returning to the home city of his childhood, Oklahoma City, to take up his earlier trade of wallpapering, along with his brother Marion. What resulted from this?
Marion Dunlap was then the appointed city overseer for the several congregations in Oklahoma City. He too had been a witness for nearly 50 years, always very active in field service and meeting participation. When he offered lodging and work to his 70-year-old disfellowshipped brother, Marion himself came under investigation. He was subsequently disfellowshipped, and within about a year, 5 other members of the Dunlap family were disfellowshipped. They were not persons engaging in wrongdoing of any kind. They had not sought to stir up trouble or engage in campaigning or protesting. They simply felt bound by conscience to let their beliefs be governed by the Word of God rather than by the word of fallible men or organizations.
Another witness, a professor at Oklahoma State University, expressed himself as feeling it was a shame that anyone with Ed Dunlap's teaching ability should not have an outlet for that ability. He helped arrange for Ed to conduct some classes at the university. This brought him under the elders' scrutiny, and he too was soon disfellowshipped. While it is true that in some of the cases those involved chose on their own to discontinue meeting attendance, this in no way reflected any desire on their part to cease friendship or conversation with their previous associates among Jehovah's Witnesses. It in no way implied any rejection by them of such persons, or any adverse feelings towards them. The complete cutting off of relationships came solely from the aggressive actions of elders. And that last part resonates with me, because you don't want to lose all your friends and your family. And I did, in the last conversations we had with some of our dear friends and with my family, I made it clear they were always welcome in our home. And you even had one of your friends say we were welcome in his home. But to do that, we knew would probably bring his disfellowshipment.
Yeah.
So we didn't want someone else to do that, to be under that kind of stress, not having made up their own mind and making this decision.
Yeah. In the next segment, Ray discusses the sad case of 2 girls named Sue who dared to disagree with the Watchtower. Next time. We're going to put a link in here to
how Ed Dunlap, his whole situation happened, and that, you know, so that's one from Crisis of Conscience that we did a long time ago about how Dunlap left.
So that's on your screen right now. But next time, 2 girls named Sue who dared to disagree.